So the last PC build video I did, I got an overwhelming amount of people complaining about my GPU choice. Saw 4060, close the video. RTX 4060, yikes. Why 4060? The 6750 XT is better. And honestly, you're probably right. I mean, a lot of people don't like the RTX 4060, and for the price, you can get an RTX 3070 for even cheaper than the 4060, and you're getting more performance for your dollar, and overall, it just makes more sense to go with, you know, better price performance GPUs in that price point. But you gotta think, I'm a PC flipper. Most people that are just average people that wanna buy a PC that's pre-built for them want NVIDIA, and they want the latest GPUs. So that's exactly what I did last video. That's pretty much all I have to say about that video. Again, if you're a PC enthusiast, you want to save as much money as possible, obviously you're going to go with like an AMD GPU at that price point. But this video is more focused on aesthetics and the 4070 Super, because the 4070 Super is probably my favorite GPU to use whenever I plan builds. It sells so fast whenever I plan builds with it, so I've just been going back to it over and over and over again. So for this video, I wanted to go into like a bigger deep dive into all the parts that I chose for this build, my thought process behind it, and how it turned out, and if I would actually use these parts again. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Just to go ahead and go over the initial cost of the entire build, the total cost after tax was $1,515.26. That's going to cover a 7600X and 4070 Super build. Now, I will say this 100% of the time, you can get a better CPU than the 7600X for this price point. You can probably even stretch it up to a 7700X, but I wanted to go for more aesthetics this time, and I just wanted to see especially how this APNX case turned out with this build. This is the APNX C1 case, and we've used it a couple times on the main channel, but I wanted to try out the white version, and I also wanted to pair it with its APNX AP1V white CPU tower cooler. And this one really caught my eye whenever I was just looking around on Amazon one day, because it's only $29 and it looks super, super clean. So I wanted to see how it paired up with this case, and that's kind of the basis for this build, was this case and CPU cooler. Most of the time, especially at this price point of $1,500, I'm usually just opting for like a Thermalright frozen note cooler, or like some kind of nice cheap AIO that does good in performance wise, just because I feel like AIOs also sell a little better in terms of aesthetics, and they just make that PC look a little more high end. So I know you air cooler lovers are gonna love this kind of CPU cooler, but for me, this is definitely going outside of my normal comfort zone and me getting into a different kind of CPU cooler. To talk more about the case itself was $99. It comes in 3 colors. It comes in black, this chroma flare, purple and blue color scheme, and then this white one, which I chose. And it comes with 3 140mm fans in the front and then 1 120mm fan in the back. Overall, it's a pretty large case given that there's those large 3 fans in the front. In terms of ports on the top, you do have an LED button or a reset switch, which we have linked to the LEDs. We have 2 USBs and then a USB Type-C and then an audio jack. In terms of ventilation, it's got a pretty nice ventilation system going on the front, and that kind of leans over into the side and into the back. And then you have 1 exhaust fan spot, porous ventilation on the bottom of the case as well to kind of allow for more airflow into the basement area. So overall, I mean, it's a pretty good setup in terms of airflow. It also even comes with a GPU support bracket installed into the case out of the factory, which is also really cool. Nice little touch, and especially for 99 bucks, I think it's a pretty solid case. It is a bit on the bigger end for my liking. I honestly like the smaller ATX size cases like the NZXT H5 Flow. That's a pretty good size, like nice ATX tower case. It's not gonna like take up too much space on your desk. This one's definitely on the heavier end, and it's definitely on the larger end because of those fans in the front. So just keep that in mind if you are getting this case. It is a larger ATX case. It's even, I think it's a little bigger than my Fractal North that I have at home too. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. The CPU that we chose for this one is the Ryzen 5 7600X. This is pretty much my go-to mid-range CPU that I build for all my PCs. The Ryzen 5 7600X, especially at this price point now, you can find them between like 183 and like 195 nowadays. And it's honestly just the no-brainer mid-range CPU because you can pair with 4060s, entered in mid-range AMD GPUs, and then all the way up to like a 4070 Super before probably gonna wanna look into upgrading that CPU when going with anything higher than the 4070 Super. But overall, it's just a very versatile chip that I've found that a lot of people like. It's always available, it's on AM5, and it's just what people like right now. So I've been doing it for pretty much every single build. It's my no-brainer go-to CPU choice. And again, it's, you wanted to go a little more high-end, you could go 7700X if you wanted to save money and not go more aesthetics-based. But at the time of purchase, we paid $194 for the CPU, so that's kind of where it's at right now. Even then, still, it's still a really good buy for the CPU, and I'm happy with it. Again, this is the APNX AP1V, and we paid $29 for this on Amazon. It is a pretty basic CPU cooler. The fan's almost built into the CPU cooler, which is what really caught my eye when I was looking at it online, and it's got a really nice minimalistic tower cooler design. Yeah, there's nothing else really I can say about it. It's 29 bucks. It was cheap, it looks good, and I mean, that's pretty much all I can say for it. We did benchmark it, and we didn't have any issues with temperatures or anything like that, so it's doing its job, and it's a pretty nice budget cooler if you're looking for a nice, clean, white budget cooler. One thing to note, which is very weird, and the reason why I have it set on this blue and like teal colored RGB right now, is that when you set it to white, it does not match the APNX case fan white. It matches, like, it has like a more purple hue. So I don't know why APNX decided to do 2 different white colors for both of these fans. I don't get it, but that's kind of why I couldn't use white. Just keep that in mind if you are mimicking this build. I'd probably end up doing a different kind of CPU cooler. Next up for the motherboard, we have a Gigabyte Aero G B650, and for this price point of $189, I honestly went for it because, one, I like Gigabyte a lot. In terms of their software, I have Gigabyte at home, and it's been the easiest one for me to use in terms of user interface and their actual software too. The last build I had was an MSI, and MSI Center actually like gave me nightmares. Gigabyte's software is a little more user-friendly. It's not as annoying to deal with. And like last video, I went with the Aero card from Gigabyte as well, and I just like the look of them because they're clean, minimalistic, and I wanted to match that with the motherboard, so that's why I went with this one. You can definitely save like $30 and still find a pretty nice looking B650, but this one has a handful of ports in the back, which I like to see. It's got 2.5 gig Ethernet, and overall, I mean, pretty good VRMs, and I have no complaints with it. It's also got a 8-pin and a 4-pin for power, so you got a decent upgrade path there for like a 7800X3D if you wanted to go to that down the road. Next up for storage, we have the 1TB Samsung 990 EVO Gen 4 NVMe. I paid $69 at the time of purchasing all the parts of this build. It was on sale for a pretty good price, and I know 990 EVOs, they only have read and write speeds up to 5,000, which is pretty normal for like a nice Gen 4 NVMe SSD. So, I mean, I honestly bought it more so for the term of Samsung drives. I feel like they do sell a little better. And 1TB is kind of like my baseline now. I could not plan a build that's below 1TB in my opinion. I get it if it's a budget system, if you want to go for like a cheaper NVMe and you wanted to go with like a 512 gig, but personally for all my builds, 1TB will come standard, and it's just because I find it really annoying whenever you're running out of storage. It is an easy upgrade down the road, but when buying a pre-build, I feel like most people aren't going to go out of their way to upgrade storage. So next up is RAM, and this is 32 gigabytes of Clevcraft white RGB RAM, and you could go with other options as well in this price point, but this is just the basic DDR5 6000 megahertz CL30 RAM kit, and this one is just one of those other ones that are priced really close to all the other options out there. It's got the timing that I want, it's got the speed that I want, and it's got the color and aesthetics that I want. So you could go with like the T-Force Delta RAM kit if you wanted to, which is very popular among PC flippers because of the price. But yeah, this one's a pretty solid one. I paid $99 as well for it, so I mean, that's pretty much right at the normal price point for DDR5 RGB. You can get this one pretty much at that price point all the time. And next up is the GPU. This is the RTX 4070 Super Aero model. I love these Aero cards, and I think they just look really, really good for the price. I did wait a little bit for this one actually, and I paid about $40 more than what they normally go for. So I paid $641.56 off Amazon, and it took a couple weeks to get in, but I think it was worth the wait. To me, I think spending an extra $20-30 on a nicer GPU is so worth it. If you're really trying to maximize bang for buck, you can go with like the cheaper models like a Zotac card, but to me, I think having a nice GPU inside will really help bring your PC to the next level aesthetics wise, and that's why I chose this Aero model, especially to match that motherboard as well. This one's pretty solid, 12 gigs of GDDR6X memory, and can't complain because it does pretty much every single game in 1440p at medium to high settings with really respectable refresh rates. We'll go over the benchmarks in a bit, but yeah, this one was definitely a good pickup, and I've never had any complaints with the 4070 Super. Next up on the list is my power supply and my sleep cable extensions. We have the Seagotep GM 750 watt 80 plus gold power supply. I chose the Seagotep one because it's honestly just a really affordable power supply that does not really sacrifice quality, honestly. They've been around for a very long time. Fully modular, 750 watts, and you can pick these up around like $73 on Amazon, so a pretty good value for a fully modular 80 plus gold power supply. And I wanted to bring up the aesthetics just a bit more like I always do, and I always like adding in these sleeve cables. This kit is from Easy DIY, and this is the 12 volt high power cable kit extensions that are specifically made for NVIDIA RTX 4070 Supers and up. Those normal sleeve cable kits don't come with this cable extension, so you got to make sure you buy the right one whenever you're going with this kind of GPU. For this Easy DIY white sleeve cable kit, it costs $29. But aside from that, that's the total cost of this build here, and overall I think it's turned out pretty good. So shout out to PC Bros, by the way. We have Zach over there who does the benchmark videos for that channel, and he actually did me the favor of going through and benchmarking this PC for me, and I'll also link the full video of the benchmark session down below so you all can check out the full benchmarking numbers and all that stuff and temperatures and how the PC did under all those games that we tested today. But just 3 basic games that are very popular. So first off, we have Cyberpunk, which they have a nice in-game benchmark tool. In 1440p on the medium preset, we averaged around 151 FPS. We had a low of 128 FPS and a high of 178. And then on the high preset in Cyberpunk 1440p, we had an average of 108 FPS, a low of 95, and then a high of 127. So pretty solid results in Cyberpunk in 1440p. It is a more demanding game, so that's a nice little benchmark spot to know where your AAA titles are going to run in 1440p. Next up on Warzone, we have on ultra settings 1440p on base POV. We got about 150 plus FPS, and that was on no upscaling. With AMD FSR in Warzone, Warzone, you can get so much FPS out of that upscaling technology. Even with an NVIDIA GPU, I'd highly recommend turning on FSR 3.0 in Warzone. For some reason, that just is like the best upscaling piece in that game. And with an unoptimized game like Warzone, it's definitely worth it to add on the upscaling because it doesn't really sacrifice quality and you'll like literally double your FPS. Overall though, without any upscaling, it did pretty solid in 1440p. And lastly, we have Fortnite in 1440p on high settings, DX12, far view distance, and high textures. We average around 140 to 150 FPS depending on where you are on the map. Overall, that's pretty solid. Again, there's no upscaling for that one either. So this thing has a lot of value when it comes to right in the mid-range. I'd call this a mid-range to closer to a high-end PC build. And I honestly think for the value of this kind of PC, you have a lot of people kind of getting up to this price point where this is like the top of the line for them. And anywhere past this price point, especially when you're selling PCs, it's kind of harder to make that sale because after the $2,000 mark, you're really entering like a new tax bracket of customers. So overall, I think this CPU and GPU combo makes an amazing mid-range PC build because overall, I mean, it's honestly more than what most people need in a PC. And there's still a good upgrade path on AM5, so you can always upgrade down the road. Unless you're looking for like the maxed out settings possible, there really isn't much more of a reason to go anything past this for the average gamer. So guys, that's gonna wrap up this video on this build guide. I hope you enjoyed this PC. Again, this was more aesthetics focused. Again, this PC was more aesthetics focused, and if you wanted to see more of like a pure performance build, which I know has been very, very popular in the YouTube community right now, I can definitely do something like that for a 4070 Super build because I feel like I have a lot of experience when it comes to planning these 4070 Super builds. There's definitely a lot of options to go whenever you're building like a mid-range to high-end build like this. This one was definitely more on the more expensive end, so I'd be happy to show you guys what I would do when it comes to more performance-oriented ones, while also still not looking that bad. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.